Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it unacceptable by any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook, this time on March 14th, or as they say now, 314 Day, like the area code here. We'll talk about that. Or Pi Day. You can choose. In any event, we thank you so much, folks, at the Gatesworth for making this program possible, as you do week in and week out. Let's meet the panelists who have joined us for this edition, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese from KTRS Radio, and Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Ray Hartmann from the Riverfront Times, along with Bill, one of our founders of the program, and from STLmag.com and the St. Louis American, wearing the green, Mr. Alvin Reid. We'll start with you, Bill McClellan. A letter from Chuck Hatfield, someone I don't know, but apparently a Jefferson City insider and an attorney, went to a lot of municipalities, if not all of them, in St. Louis County, telling municipal officials that they better not discuss Better Together's plan on company time while they're serving as public servants, and also warning that no materials or resources for their cities or towns should be used in any discussion regarding Better Together, even though this proposal to merge the city and the county through a statewide vote in 2020 will involve cities and towns. Is this really how we're going to be better together?
Well, I think that this thing just continues to be great and so much fun. On one hand, Better Together likes to talk about how we want to discuss this and engage the community. And as soon as somebody discusses it, they're going to sue. They're going to stop this right now. And they're like the class action lawyers who demand so much in discovery that people finally say, okay, we'll pay you off, just go away. I mean, these are elected officials who have newsletters, and the constituents want to know, what do you think about Better Together? What are we going to do? And if they put anything in about it, Better Together is going to go after them. I mean, it's as long as Better Together doesn't pretend they want a discussion, right, I'm fine with it.
And, of course, I didn't mention this, the letter comes from Chuck Hatfield, an attorney who refuses to name his client. Whoever's paying him is remaining a mystery.
I think that's a bigger point. I mean, Better Together is denying having anything to do with this. Well, no, I know. And it's like Chuck Hatfield, who, by the way, worked with Jay Nixon's chief of staff and was, is not some guy off the street, has an obligation, I think, in this case, as long as we're having a public discussion, to disclose who this client that's so, if it's not Better Together and it's not somebody being paid by Better Together, who is so personally interested as just John Q. Public that they're willing to spend a large amount of money intimidating public officials around and communities around St. Louis? I think it's horrible.
If there is a leader of our not so fast movement, I think it has to be Tim Fitch. I mean, honestly, it has to be Tim Fitch. So I would like I've just nominated him as the president of our movement of the rebellion within the rebellion.
But he's an elected official,
right,
and by this, I guess. See, the funny thing is, when this plan was announced on the 28th of January, it included Steve Stenger, the county executive, and Lyda Crewson, the mayor of St. Louis, who appear in the middle of the day on company time.
They'd say they're all in.
Right.
Right. Maybe Better Together had no idea this was coming or whatever. I doubt that, but maybe it's true. Because now, what you get
when
now.
When you say this, what do you mean?
The Hatfield,
okay.
right. So what you could have is now people are carpet bagging, chum in the water, I smell money. I get on this side, they're paying. Whether it fails, whether it succeeds, I'm going to get a payday sooner or later. And I would rather be on the side of Rex Sinkfield, whether it passes or whether it fails, because now I'm a buddy of Rex Sinkfield. So maybe Better Together had nothing to do with it. Well, I will say this, though, that you were saying, and I agree with you, that's a brilliant idea with Tim. I nominated him too. But I'd still say this, all right, help us Ann Wagner, help us Roy Blunt, help us Josh Hawley. You see what's going on here, and it's not right.
And they're being very, very quiet.
Very
But
quiet.
whether it's going to be President Fitch or whoever it's going to be, somebody has to make sure if they're going to raise this kind of fuss over the 88 municipalities and the leaders of those municipalities doing the job they were elected to do, then I think that somebody needs to find out exactly who in this town, and especially in the media, who is on the dime for this. And that needs to be disclosed every time you open a mic, every time you're on camera. I think that, because if that is not unethical, I don't know what is.
Well, let's not rush forward with that.
Well, see, and I have to tell you, I think we may be the only uncompensated people here in the media.
Is that a hint, Ray?
I would say I did a column this past week on Better Together and found Dave Leipoltz, who's I forget the title, but basically director of, well, no, he's the director.
Research director.
He's their research director, and couldn't have been more professional. And to me, we don't know if Better Together really has nothing to do with this. It kind of stretches the imagination.
It sure does.
To think they do. But I mean, when they're professional, I mean, they may not have liked what I ended up concluding, but this thing can be done with an air of civility to it and an air of, we may disagree, but so
you think we should keep
far,
it civil?
By threatening,
this is not. This
I
is
think we should keep it civil,
This is an
too.
example of it not
Yeah.
being civil, and that is a big problem.
And
for me.
I agree with you should try to be civil,
Yeah.
but meanwhile, I think
You'd
one
be
side,
mad.
but one side is
Yeah.
trying to be civil, and meantime the other side is bombing Pearl Kirkwood.
no, that's
and meanwhile,
No,
Pearl,
I'm not
is
saying you shouldn't
Pearl
be mad.
Kirkwood supposed to say,
Right.
"Hey, maybe they'll just take Hawaii and leave us alone." Like no,
No, I get you. I
y'all
get that.
started it. It's on.
I don't
So
mind people being mad about it. I'm just saying that this kind of tactic is real
Okay.
unseemly.
Well, let me ask you, Alvin Reid, as we move from Better Together to Washington University in University City, channels 5 and 2, and I think the Post-Dispatch, maybe the RFT reported this week that there was a big party celebrating, I guess, Mardi Gras, and the WashU kids were, I guess, in numbers like 600, 700, 800 in a residential neighborhood. One of the local city council members complained, said WashU's got to keep its eyes on its students and patrol them better. I'm thinking, hey, that school was there way before any of the neighbors, and if you move near a school in South Bend, Indiana, or Chapel Hill, or Columbus, Ohio, wherever you're moving near a university, that's what you get. You get a lot of rambunctious partiers. What do you say?
Well, I mean, there's on campus, there's off campus, but you live in the vicinity of Washington University. I side with the neighbors of the university. Now, when the black students were, let's just say, allegedly harassed by the police at the IHOP, okay, the university started, oh, we are for the students, and everybody else is out of line, and I think they were right on that. But at the same time, this is the same Washington University that, in the middle of all this Better Together, we get to keep our own police force, and we get to do this, and we get to do that. You can't have it, both ways, 9 ways to Sunday. You shouldn't have 600, 700 kids spilled out into somebody's neighborhood that's out of control. You've got your own police force, but you want to keep.
The police force can't patrol you, city.
No, you can't.
The police force patrols the campus,
you
and the
roll
University
up.
City Police can patrol the party, and that's how it works. They don't have jurisdiction.
No, if Merrimack Community College had some party that was all over Lee Avenue where my mom lives, close to the university, and all in the neighborhood, the Kirkwood police were like, hey, this is out of control. Either tone it down or we'll get
if they had ragers going, is that what they call them?
Rangers?
Ragers, whatever.
Oh, party ragers.
Whatever.
Yeah.
If they had
You're showing your age.
rage, I think I meant rave. Oh
Rave.
my gosh,
That's what I
somebody
meant.
needs to call the nursing home. I'm ready to go. No, if they were having parties out of control, 800 kids, 900 kids in this lovely residential area every weekend, then obviously I can see where something. This is Mardi Gras. I mean, I just think that we need some perspective here. This was one time a year. I think everybody needs to settle down. I'll help them collect wine bottles and beer cans. I really
I'm sure
will.
you
Take
will.
them to the recycling.
No, that's what I said about Mardi Gras in Soulard. They took the parade out, and I said it should be wild as it can get. I said this on the show.
You
They're
did.
like, why are we trying to tame it? Oh, because blah 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 blah. And these were adults. Now, these are kids. And granted, you get 600-700 college kids together. I bet you a third of them aren't 21 years old. This is a little out of control.
Well, did
Imagine
the police go in and make some arrests on this?
They made 9
Yeah.
arrests for, I think, basically talking
Minimal
back.
stuff, yeah.
There's an interesting wrinkle to this because it came up. What I brought up last week on the Title IX discussion. WashU, to its credit, is pushing back against the idea to repeal the Title IX thing. One of the Title IX Obama era rules is that if there's a case of a sexual assault off campus, that the university has to take responsibility and investigate off campus.
Oh, that's interesting,
So
yeah.
in a way, WashU is, at least in that contest, are arguing for some responsibility for what its students do off campus. So it's a little hard to say that they can just wash their hands of anything to do with it. But to Wendy's point, it was a one-off thing. But I do think that WashU should have some responsibility to you can't just say it's off campus.
You are getting old, okay. Hey, I want to ask you, Wendy, about Governor J.B. Pritzker from Illinois, of course, who would like to start a 7.95% income tax on people making more than $1 million. Right now, Illinois has a flat income tax. It's 4.95%. Of course, Illinois has a huge budget problem. However, people move, and already Illinois is losing people, a lot of people with money, to places like Florida and Texas where they don't have income tax. Do you think he can get away with this?
I think if I lived in Illinois, I would be prepared for just about anything. And desperate politicians come up with desperate ideas. And I don't even think this is that far afield. I mean, this isn't that unusual. So he wants to succeed. He obviously has a mandate for change from Governor Rauner. And so I think he's going to use it. And I think he will ultimately have more support than he appears to have right now, where you've got some Republicans obviously bucking him. Business community not all in. But it's not as much of a blowback as I thought it would be.
Well, Illinois has this huge underfunded
Crater.
pension problem, and they have to raise money somehow. So this seems like a reasonable idea.
Agreed.
And if you start out at 7.5 and you come to some compromise about 6, but going back, like Illinois is, it's broke. And he said, listen, let's do recreational marijuana and tax it. Let's do gambling and tax it. Let's do anything we can to bring revenue into the state. I just cannot argue with that. And he came in because, look, Rauner had big promises about balancing the budget without doing anything except balancing the budget. It didn't work. You had your chance, you lost. So here comes the guy that says, like, no, look, this is a plan. I do have a plan.
Yeah.
This is part of it.
The only problem is, though, people are already leaving Illinois. They're leaving Chicago.
Well,
and
but they're
we
not-
know
but-
when they did this in Connecticut, people moved. Even last week, they interviewed the mother of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who moved from New York to Florida, and they asked her why. She goes, I moved because the taxes were too high in New York. People are going to move out.
But I understand that. But this is one of those things where, like the two things that don't get, used enough are the wastebasket and the word no.
Yeah.
Just tell them, like, listen, if you feel as though you have to move, then you have to move, and who's ever left, we're going to work with.
Well,
But
he's a billionaire, very, very much like the guy at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So I think he's going to do some experimental stuff.
But also,
I
how many
don't-
people make $1 million?
Let's
Because
keep-
my commercial would be, how many of y'all make $1 million out there in Illinois?
Right.
I think,
And
we
it's
should,
a
I think
lot.
we should keep people's impairments out of this. But I think that what's interesting to me is the contrast with Missouri. Because in Missouri, the politicians treat revenues as a contagious disease. I mean, that anything that's revenue producing, and it's such an interesting contrast in that and there's probably a middle ground between just saying we got to cut everything to the bone and do away with our services. I tend to be on the side of given,
Yeah, he's
particularly
being
when
responsible
given
grown-up.
revenues.
We need
and,
money.
and
Well,
obviously you got to be
also
concerned
cut, you can cut the budget.
You can try to do
or
both.
You can amend the Constitution and change the pensions, which is tough to do. But those pensions for the government workers in Illinois tend to be pretty darn generous.
Right.
Well, if you come along, like I say, anytime you say, like, okay, from henceforth, this is what your pension is, I don't have a problem with that. But you can't look back at these other people and say, like, from henceforth, we've taken your money.
They do that. Companies do that.
In private industry, it happens, obviously, like the coal miners.
All right. Hey, tell you what, folks, we hope you join us September 26th for Donny Bash. It's our big fundraiser at the Sheldon. Here are some details.
Well, a show like Donnybrook that has been successful for 32 years must be doing something right. Hi, I'm Mary Ann Carson, and we invite you to the next Donny Bash. It's scheduled for Thursday, September 26th, once again at the Sheldon Concert Hall in Midtown St. Louis. It's a wonderful evening. If you've never been, it's like the guys from Donnybrook say, you have no idea what you're missing. If you have been before, come back for another time. It's easy for tickets to Donny Bash. It just takes being a sustaining member of the 9 Network. It's simply $5 a month for one ticket. But the real deal here is if you become a sustaining member at $12 a month, you'll get 2 tickets to Donny Bash, and you will also receive the new 9 Network mug. So those are our ways of saying thank you when you sustain programming here on the 9 Network at $12 a month. And of course, Donny Bash is just a wonderful evening. The doors open at the Sheldon Concert Hall at 5:30. The parking is a breeze. You'll be going in, there are refreshments before the live broadcast. The cast from Donnybrook is introduced on stage. You're part of that broadcast, and then there's a long reception afterwards. We don't think there's any better way to celebrate a wonderful program like Donnybrook and the wonderful other programs that you see on the 9 Network than by going to Donny Bash. Once again, it's going to be Thursday, September 26th, and we want to see you there. Give us a call.
Boy, it is a fun time, and we encourage everyone to join us. We hope you pick up that phone and call those numbers on the bottom of the screen, because this is our big fundraiser, and you're not just supporting Donnybrook, which we hope you enjoy in this 32nd year, but of course you're supporting all of the 9 Network, which brings you quality programs all day long. And as we are commercial free, we rely on you, the viewer, to help us out. So thank you. You've been really generous in the past, and we thank you in advance for being generous tonight. And you get something out of it. You get a ticket to sit in this audience at the Sheldon, the acoustically perfect Sheldon, and watch our live Donnybrook. We call it Donny Bash. We meet in advance. We schmooze, we have the show, and then we schmooze again. Of course, the bar is open, so that might enhance some of you. I hope it does. Look at that, my gosh. As Alfred E. Newman would say, cheap, you're losing money staying home. So pick up that phone and join us now.
And we sure appreciate it when people show up at Donny Bash and pack the
Absolutely.
Sheldon. It's a lot of fun for us, and it really, the station, it helps. It's really a critical part of the station's fundraising, and it's great
And
fun
some
for us.
people travel. I mean, we have people every year from Greenville, Illinois.
Yep.
And there's a
Yep.
little contingent of them, and it's fun to see them every year.
Well, back in the, I show my age, back in the day, you used to have house parties and rent parties, and this is kind of it, man. It's a good time. People come in, hey, help us out, contribute, but you get a party. And that's cool.
Are you saying,
and
are you saying it's a good place for ragers?
Rager, yeah, it's a rager.
Alvin, that's for sure.
We're going to
Sorry,
rage.
I'm
We are
really
going to
sorry.
rage.
My
I'm
children
so
are
sorry.
changing their
I'm
names.
so
they're
sorry
moving.
about
They're
that.
going underground. But no, it's also kind of it's become a kickoff to the fall season. And what's so funny is that it's usually about 110 degrees at the end of September. But it's so much fun, and those sustaining memberships that you see on the screen, those are really important for the 9 Network. So if you are interested in giving at that level, then please make that ongoing monthly contribution, because being able to, as we all know, being able to count on money is much better than the opposite, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So,
right.
yeah.
Some of us at this table
Some
understand
of us would
that.
love that, yeah.
Amen. All right. So thank you so much for picking up those tickets, and we'll see you in September. Alvin, Reid, I know that you spent some time in a previous life with the RCGA. Now, it wasn't the RCGA, but another group on this day, March 14th, 314, right? I mean, that's our area code, so they're trying to kind of capitalize on that, and a video was created and released. This video is to tell the story of St. Louis, because people say that in the world of brands, brand marketing, you have to tell your story. So to that effect, this video, which our viewers are about to see, was created to extol the virtues of St. Louis. So we ask folks to watch the screen, as I hope you're doing right now, and you can see what came up from our friends with the STL MADE organization. Can we roll this?
St. Louis is the home of makers, builders, creators, thinkers, and doers. We've always been this way, and today, our tenacious spirit of doing is creating a renaissance from the ground up, one creator at a time. You see, this is a place that loves to say yes, one that shows up for our neighbors, for our teams, for each other. We are generations old and generations young. We're the home of global leaders and local gems. We're looking in the mirror and seeing what needs to be done. Committed to building a region that doesn't stop moving forward. By bringing people, businesses, and institutions together in bold ways with a determined spirit of optimism to create a region that's more open to all. We're making a place where you can start something, where you get the support to stand out, where you can stay, put down roots, and make St. Louis yours. Nowhere does the spirit of being STL MADE shine brighter than in the stories of the people who live here. Because the people here make St. Louis, but something about St. Louis makes our people too. That's STL MADE. See our stories at thestl.com.
All right, Alvin, Reid, you can play the role of Ebert or Siskel or both. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Okay, first of all, it's never winter in St. Louis, okay? It's never cold. It's always
springtime.
It's always springtime.
Yeah,
in
but
St.
it's never
Louis.
hot either.
And we are more diverse than diverse. In fact, there's more minority people live here than white people, based on that.
It's more diverse than Greenwich Village.
Yeah,
I
right.
can tell you that.
It was something else. All right, I hate to be a hater, but okay, I think the goal is to put St. Louis in a positive light. And if you're not from St. Louis, you look and say like, hey, whatever. But for those of us who live in St. Louis, and I'm not saying have snippets of riots and poverty and all
what are
that.
you gonna do?
But at the same time, I'm thinking like, okay.
I liked it. I like the fact that it has a totally different attitude and a
Now,
different
who
feel.
sees this? Just, I don't
know. It's just, we just
Are
saw
they
it.
are they
I
buying
just-
a campaign, a television campaign? I don't know.
But I like
Or if you just go to
the
website.
I like the air of self-confidence about it. And I mean, it's the first time I saw it, but I think it's St. Louis needs to. We've all agreed that we have sort of a civic inferiority complex. I like just the fact that it was confident, and I agree that it literally may not be the exact representation of St. Louis, but I like the feel, and I think it's very important that in any way St. Louis markets itself and presents itself, it's with confidence. So I liked it.
Well, I do think we have to kind of revise the story because so many times, you pick up the newspaper and you see a story about St. Louis and it's not flattering. Even Saturday Night Live last week put down Missouri in one of its skits.
They
trying
did.
to
That
be
was
funny.
hilarious.
You thought that was funny?
Well, I
huh?
mean, it wasn't.
And that's
it
why
wasn't great for us. But
That's why
it was a
St.
fun
Louis
skit.
has to work hard to kind of tell a story. And some cities do tell stories
wasn't.
well. And I don't think we've told our story all that
right,
well.
Well,
but
who are we telling it to? I still don't get
Well,
that.
this will be people outside. Maybe people will move here. They'll
Well,
start
no,
companies.
I mean, how does one watch this?
Well,
I
you
mean,
go
is
to the
it-
internet. Maybe if you're looking to place a business,
So
you'll
like
go to.
if you look up St. Louis on Google,
Yeah.
this comes up.
It's
is
probably
that it?
too long to be a 60-second. I think it's about 90 seconds long. So
It's
it's
probably
too
part
long
of
to
the
be a commercial.
presentations that they probably do when they're trying to attract conventions.
Oh, okay.
Right, something like that. But they also should flash up there that we're the ninth largest city
Yeah,
in
right.
America.
Well,
Like I said, like where we're painting this picture. How about we just like really paint this picture? Like
I
I
thought
said,
it was kind of interesting. It was almost like a nanosecond of coverage on one of the things that we're most proud of, and that's the baseball team.
I like
didn't.
that part.
You did like that part?
No,
okay.
and I don't know this, but I think you had to pay for that.
Is that
And
right?
I bet
okay.
that probably came
the
down
licensing.
to that probably came down
and
to
even the
licensing.
Blues. That was just like
They
a
showed
little.
Louis.
It was just a
Right.
little snippet of
We support
that.
our teams.
Well, maybe that's good because maybe too often we are defined as a baseball
Right,
city,
that's what I was
and they're
thinking.
trying to move beyond that and invite innovators and entrepreneurs to St. Louis. so they can have a craft beer while they sport their
It
beard.
certainly looked young and hip. I kept.
Yeah.
Well, and there are some young and hip things
That's
going on in
exactly
the
right,
Cortex
Ray,
and in
exactly
other
right.
places. There
They're
really
having
are.
rages.
Right.
No,
they're
they're
raging. All
raging.
right already.
Stop picking on Wendy. I feel bad that
I wish they had shown
Not
the
real bad.
University City neighborhood, which
No.
we're all complaining about.
But I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, there is stuff going on in the city. If you go, you look at areas, as I said, I mentioned the Cortex.
Near
but
here.
There's all throughout that.
But,
There's
okay,
the Grove. You look at where
Grove,
it was
yeah.
several years ago, where it is today. There's a lot of stuff going on here.
Grand Center and the Cortex District both
And
have made huge
I
developments.
I would just say if I were, if my opinion were being sought out, and after my rage comment, I don't think that will ever happen again, not even in my own home, but I would tell anybody who's trying to market anything to try to get at least a snippet of some pasty old people who,
Playing bocce ball.
playing bocce ball on the
that's
hill
right.
or whatever.
You're serious?
No, on.
Okay, all right,
No,
okay,
I'm.
pasty old
Oh, no, wait a minute,
because
wait a minute.
there are a lot
now,
of
wait,
pasty
what,
old
what
people.
was in there? King Louis. Now, most people don't know that's who St. Louis is even named after, but for
Right.
some reason, that had to be in
right,
there.
okay.
Right.
Henchman, slaveholder, on and on and on.
Heaven, we could go on about all the things that went on there.
At least we removed our Confederate
Forest
statue.
Park, I didn't
we
see it.
could show the
Zoo.
blank
and
spot
what's
where the
the,
Confederate statue.
I think
used
that
to
was
be.
the actor who did another commercial for us. What's his name?
It wasn't.
Well,
I don't
so-
think
You
it
don't
was
think it was
Sterling
him?
K. Brown.
All right, well,
At least
anyway.
it didn't
All I
sound
says
like
I
him.
like
If you're
the
gonna have a
feel.
black
It sounded
guy.
like a younger person.
Wait, all I say is I like the feel of it. I didn't deal with central casting. I mean,
No, I'm just.
I mention Cherokee
have a
Street.
lot of.
It's got like.
I would have a lot
I
of.
mean,
I would, if I'm going to be diverse, I would show
okay.
beyond diversity.
That's the point I was making
Okay,
about
right.
King Louis, was that, no, that's as old a St. Louis as you can show. Well, then how about you show St. Louis as is? Like
How
I
about
said.
the new trolley?
That's exactly right.
Where's the trolley?
That's exactly right.
Running into the rear
Hitting
view.
Smashing into
right,
people.
running into a rearview mirror.
Right, I didn't see Kirkwood on there either.
I think it's
Well,
time to
Ray,
move on to something else.
The idea,
As
Ray,
the
is-
great Martin
yeah.
Dugan would say.
Yeah, let's move on to something
Let's
else.
move on to something
Ray, I want to
else,
ask
like
you,
right away.
we, way before I got here in the 1970s, they were building a convention center, and then we had to improve it in the 1990s, and we're still improving it now.
Right.
Don Marsh had a program where Kitty Ratcliffe, who heads up the convention
Right.
organizations here, is asking for $6 million from the county, $6 million from the city, and that's going to go on for another 40 years. Let me ask you this. If conventions are successful, can't these organizations kind of pay for themselves? I mean, shouldn't the convention
this
center be
is-
raising money to pay for its own improvements? Does it have to come
No,
from
I think
taxpayer dollars?
this is a continuation of the existing bonds that have been on the $6 million from the city and county that will be retired. I want to say by 21 or 24,
Yeah.
I think in full. And this is just going to continue running them. And it's just necessary infrastructure. It's like if you have an older house, you got to replace the roof every 20 years. This is just the convention center part of it. It's not the stadium. And they've got a pretty cool plan for not only expanding and adding all the exhibit space and doing the stuff they have to do to keep it current, but also some open spaces and some to make the convention center physically more appealing to visitors. I'm all for it. I mean, you've got it's not sexy stuff, but it's necessary infrastructure. You can't give up. We've got a lot of. I think Kitty Ratcliffe's done a very good job. It ain't the easiest sell right now. And I think that you got to give them the tools. There's the alternative to do nothing is just not okay.
If we do,
one other thing.
go ahead.
This is the Explore St. Louis, and this is going to be on the county. The city's already signed off. The county council has it on the docket Tuesday. This is an example for those of us that are not crazy about Better Together. This is an example of how the city and county work together.
We have been doing it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And you don't need governmental surgery to do the CVC or the ZMD and some of
that's
those.
what I was gonna
and I think
ask.
that's an important thing for the county to get behind.
If it is proven that we are in fact better together instead of my people and not so fast, where is Kitty Ratcliffe going to get that $6 million? You said she had $6 million coming from the county, $6 million coming from the city.
I'm sure it'll be
Is
12.
that
If the
12
two are
million?
mine, it'll be
No.
12 million.
Well, that's what. All right. Now,
that would be
out.
the. No, that's
See,
not going to be.
that's no issue.
No, I'm
But
saying that's
basically,
what it's gonna be.
Oh, really?
It
Well,
should be
here's
an
my
issue.
thing.
Why?
Okay, I've got a county executive that's all in. The cities got a mayor that's all in. Meanwhile, as a voter, resident of the county, if you're a voter, resident of the city, how about, they're coming to you saying like, hey, let's all come together and cough up this $6 million a year for the next 40 years, even though you ain't gonna exist. You're not gonna have your police force. Some of your taxes gonna go wherever we want to send them to. How about we say, that's $6 million we could save.
Well, that's the whole thing.
Not good.
$12 million a year, Ray says it's money well spent, but the real question is, where else could it have been spent?
Well,
could have been spent maybe on tourism. This is convention, which in the
it
the
has
tourism
to be
business
spent
is
on tourism.
Well, that's what they say. But now we've learned with public safety and Prop P that you can be pretty creative in how you allocate these dollars. So, I mean, it could be spent on parks. It could be spent on...
No, it couldn't.
You sure could, because parks, of course, draw tourists, as you know, to Forest Park. So there's that.
Well, John, I thought Ray had a really good point about if you have an old house, you have to put money into it.
And that's true.
And we really don't want the convention center in the heart of downtown to be a complete dump. I mean, we don't.
But it's an arms race that some professors like Haywood Sanders, that I think you used to quote, Ray, in your column back in the day in the Riverfront Times, they've shown that cities never win these battles. There's an arms race to keep building convention centers, and they keep building and renovating. Meanwhile, they have to subsidize the hotel that's across the street. I mean, if these conventions were bringing in so much revenue, why do we have to subsidize hotels to be near them?
Because every city that's serious, every city in the country that's serious about this invests in their convention facilities, and it's what you do. And you're making if the county next week, if the county council, because Stanger's for it, kind of flips, it looks like there's some support for it in the council would be making Better Together's case by turning this down.
Oh, absolutely not.
They will
Absolutely
be
not.
making Better Together's case.
That's where you're wrong.
No, I'm not wrong.
You're wrong
They
because
would be making a case.
No,
The point
that's
I'm
not
making is
the case.
you don't need Better Together for the county to support things in
But
the
we
city.
don't need Better Together to wreck our communities.
They're not-
But this is it, Ray.
This is
everything keeps coming up. You all play nice while we do anything we want to do.
Ray, I think you have to separate this convention center from Better Together.
Well, I'm just saying
one
it
can be opposed
proves-
to Better
I
Together.
think when
and
this-
well, just let me finish, Ray. I just don't think that they're necessarily convergent. Whether the city or the county, we both put in money for the convention center. Everybody wants it to work.
Let me ask you this.
Okay.
We've been funding these convention centers for 30 or 40 years, by my estimation. When are conventions in this town going to take off?
Well, we get
When?
conventions.
We do
No,
get
we're
take
second
off.
win. The leaders have admitted that.
Milwaukee just got the
Democratic
Dems.
convention.
Okay, well,
I thought-
Charlotte
we should get
got-
so we're gonna
So
get
you
a
think the
convention.
solution is just to shut the convention center down, to let it decay? I mean, what is your alternative? What is your alternative?
Well, my
I think-
alternative
I
is
would
everybody
go-
down there who works in CVC and all the executives are supposed to be bringing these conventions together. If they all took a 3% pay cut for the next 2 years, they'd probably have
I don't
$20
know.
million.
You know,
Well,
I think we should go with tourism, which means like families coming here and people to take a look at our museums and the arch and beyond. I'm not sure we're going to compete with the Chicagos, the Orlandos, the Nashvilles of the world in the convention
Well,
business.
first of all, with tourism, when we have our cultural institutions, we use the 1960s free admission model to turn off
there's
tens
that.
of millions of tourism dollars away. Conventions matter to metropolitan areas. We are situated. We have enough.
But
we
I
have
think
enough
we have to
hotel.
be-
You got to think of the hotel investments. We have enough structure to be a good
We have to be
convention
realistic,
city.
and
though.
we ought to be
But
able
we
to
got
compete
to.
with
You
Nashville.
have to have.
Well, Nashville
and being
is
realistic
the
means
music
having.
capital of the world.
Excuse me.
I mean,
Right,
it's tough to compete with
Chicago,
that.
we can't compete.
You
with.
cannot give up on convention business, and you have to have an
But you know what?
updated
But
convention
that's $12
center.
million that would look nice in a classroom too, which are
but it's not
underfunded.
gonna
you know,
go-
And I
It's-
know where $25 million is supposedly going to go, which could go directly to,
yeah.
you know.
I mean, you have to consider that, Ray, because our
I'm
police
telling
officers
you-
are underfunded in the city. We don't have enough police officers. Our schools are not adequate, but we're finding the $12 million a year to fund the convention.
It is unfortunate, though, that usually when I think, and obviously she's done a good job, and most people wouldn't want that job, but most of the time when I'm thinking of Kitty Ratcliffe, I'm not thinking of the conventions that are in town. I'm thinking of the money that is being requested, and they need to turn that around somehow.
But
I mean,
this is just basic investment in your.
I
can't
understand
believe
that.
With no alternative, we're just going to just give up and
Nobody's-
not let the convention. This is just basically investing
Hey,
in
hey,
your
no.
You
convention
seem
center.
to be
It's
saying though
not-
that we
it's
have
not
to use the
funny.
same
It shouldn't even
formula
be
as
controversial.
Chicago or New York City, and we can't.
funny
It shouldn't
thing is,
even be controversial.
we talk all over the place. We say, okay, conventions are really important, but we really want the Rams. Then the Rams leave, and we say, oh, good, now we get more conventions. But then when Oliver Luck and the XFL say, we want to take your stadium instead, we go, oh, yeah, bring in the XFL. We don't need the conventions. I mean, what is it?
Agree.
Well, we're still struggling, Charlie. We're trying to get
We're a
things
work in
together.
progress.
We are.
All right.
A work in progress.
And we invite you to join us for the next Donnie Bash. Here are some of the details on this big event, our big fundraiser for 2019.
What could be better than Donnybrook every Thursday evening right here on the 9 Network? Well, how about Donnie Bash? It happens once a year, and this year the date is Thursday, September 26th, once again at the Sheldon Concert Hall. I'm Mary Ann Carson, and the folks from Donnybrook have always said, if you've never been to a Donnie Bash, don't put it off any longer. It really is a very exciting evening, whether when you arrive at 5:30, when the doors open. First of all, parking is no problem at all. Second of all, there are refreshments and a cash bar, and you can enjoy yourself there before the members of Donnybrook are introduced on stage. You, as in the audience, will be part of that broadcast. You've heard the folks from Donnybrook talk about what a difference you make in the audience. Well, it's the same as the difference that you make to the programs here at the 9 Network. It's easy to get tickets to Donnie Bash. Give us a call at 1-800-568-9099. You can also go online at 9net.org. That's NINEnet.org to get the tickets. Now, $5 as an ongoing sustaining member of the 9 Network, that gets you one ticket. But how about this deal? When you become a sustaining member of the 9 Network at $12 a month, you will receive 2 tickets to Donnie Bash and a handsome 9 Network mug. So that's our way of saying thank you, not only for being part of Donnie Bash and making Donnybrook even more successful for another season, but thanking you for taking part in supporting the great programs here on the 9 Network. You know, you don't find programs anywhere else like you do right here on the 9 Network. Call us now.
That's right. So consider yourself invited. Consider yourself invited. We're looking for everybody to join us. If you got a phone, hey, give us a call right now. It's too windy to go outside. Join us at the Channel 9 Donnie Bash fundraiser in September. I don't know how many years we've been doing this, but it gets better every single year. It's a lot of fun. And there you are. Look at these people, how much fun they're having as they contribute and support the #1 public television station in the country, at least in terms of percentage of viewers. So we thank you so much for your support, and we try and make it worth your while. I think we do. We get to know some of you, and we
Borrow money.
borrow money, ask you to pay our bills. No, I'll put it this way, and I've said this before. I have never heard of another television program in the country going live and inviting the audience to join it for a fundraiser, and with beer and drinks and appetizers. It's really unusual. I don't want to say that, you know, we're the only one in the country, because I've just never heard of it. And I've been in broadcasting a long time. You hear about these things. This is not modeled after any other PBS fundraiser in the country. No other station in this town certainly does this. It's a live broadcast, which in and of itself is rare, in front of a live audience. I mean, you don't see this anymore.
Absolutely. We go back in time, you know, really far back in time, to when TV shows were done like this, and a lot of people that have come, who I've invited, and just says, like, once it's over, they said, like, it really was live. You know, and I'm kind of like, well, what did you think? I missed it. No, it was really live. We were really, like, when they showed the cameras and we, like, the audience, we were, like, really on TV. And that's like, yeah, that is cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and this is not meant to sound as self-serving as it sounds, I promise. But but when, you know, we're sitting around the table week after week and we're discussing all of the challenges that we face as a region, and when you go to Donnie Bash, you see the most important thing that we have going for us, and that is our, you know, the people in this region are very invested in the, you know, the future. They're very invested in being well informed They get along with the people who fundamentally they disagree with. It is really quite a night to feel great about being
and they
here.
come down to Grand Center, too,
Yeah, yeah.
which is another thing. I mean, sometimes Grand Center just seems so hip. I mean, sometimes there'll be a show on the Fox on a Thursday,
Right.
and all these people will be walking on the street, and I'll think, this is working.
Right.
The whole
Yes.
thing.
When you were
And
talking-
Donnie Bash is a bit like that.
Well, when you were talking about what's most important, I thought you were going to mention the crew because Channel 9 does an amazing. No, seriously, Channel 9 does an
Definitely.
amazing art crew.
Amen.
And I'm not just saying this for the camera time, although I mean, I realize that could influence the decisions by Anne Marie
he's due
Berger and
for a
the All
close-up.
Stars. That we have, but seriously, one of the real elements that has become really seamless over the years is the production quality of it, and we've talked about the acoustics many times. The Sheldon is just amazing, facility. I don't know how old it is, but it's been there a long time, and is a good example of St. Louis at its best, which is our history being preserved, and the Sheldon embodies that.
I think this is
so
going
I
to be our
think it's all
15th
very
year,
important.
by the way.
15.
Wow. It
That's
really is,
amazing.
seriously.
It's a tradition.
A good,
Yeah.
It's a
a
tradition.
good experience for
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
because of how well it's
And
all
you go
put
there
together.
and you think, hey, I'd like to see a concert here. I bet that happens a lot. And
I think it
concerts are
does.
great at
I
the
think it does.
Sheldon.
And parking is not a problem.
Parking not a problem.
Parking is not a problem.
Albert Einstein once did his thing on that stage. I don't know if he lectured or took questions or what he did, but to actually be in someplace like, and all the great talent that appears
Sure,
there,
yeah.
and there's the where we are behind the the stage and doing our pre-show and whatnot before we go upstairs. You really do kind of get goosebumps in that, like, a really lot of talented, great people have been sitting in these same chairs. Now, what we are doing sitting there, I don't know, but it spills out onto the stage. We're like, hey, we got to be good.
man.
We got to be good.
Right.
All right. I
Alvin,
mean,
do you ever feel like the presence of Albert Einstein at the table?
I feel that all.
I never realized he was there.
Not only at that table, all the time.
I sometimes feel the absence of Albert Einstein more than
Well, I hate to be the one to break it to you, but you've always sort of reminded me and several other people
He
of
does have
Mark
that-
Twain, but now you're getting into that
Yeah,
Albert
Einstein.
Einstein. You're
I
looking
like
very
that.
smart.
I like that.
So that's the
Wendy.
phone number. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be so fun. The University City Council might shut it down if we're too crazy a rage.
Oh, you're
Hey,
right.
Thank you so much for joining us in September. All right, Bill McClellan, I want to talk to you about your former colleague, Doug Moore, who is a fine reporter for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and has decided to go to the other side. He's now going to be a spokesperson or an executive, I guess, with the St. Louis County Council. Are you a little concerned that line between government and journalism is getting blurred as more and more reporters, like your former colleague Paul Hampel and others, have taken jobs with the government? Because you do wonder if there could be at least the appearance that the reporter may go soft in some ways, or who knows what in the reporting, kind of give some sort of value in exchange for a job?
No, I'm not concerned about that at all. Maybe it's because I know guys like Doug Moore and Paul Hampel, and I know that wouldn't happen with them. It concerns me that journalism and the Post-Dispatch is losing so many fine reporters. I mean, we could talk for hours about the shame of local papers losing so many people and all the stories that are covered that won't be covered. But as far as people like Doug being able to get a good job in government, I think fine, it helps government. I mean, guys like Doug and Paul help the government, and as a taxpayer, I'm happy to see them working. Sorry they left the newspaper.
And they have to deal with what the future of their employer is, which is the Post, which I think will be here for another 150, 200 years. Who knows? I think it'll always be there. But what their individual future is, I don't know. I'm going to give you an example of why it kind of bothers me. If next year Derek Gould left the Post-Dispatch to go work for the St. Louis Cardinals, in my mind I would be kind of thinking like, well, obviously he never crossed the Cardinals in any way, and the Cardinals are satisfied with what he did. Come work for the Cardinals. And I don't think you should ever be in a situation where the team that you have been covering for several years now hires you all right, because that just looks like maybe they really appreciated everything you
and
did.
I
That
think
hasn't
you're-
happened though, Alvin.
No,
I mean,
no,
we should be
it's an
clear.
example.
I think you're-
I understand that, but-
I think you're making a good point, but I think that we veer toward homerism anyway, don't we? In the lots of the coverage, whether and especially in electronic media.
In sports or in all?
sports.
Okay,
you know.
I take that for granted.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we
Right.
do.
But
so.
maybe it wasn't a good example. I'm just trying to give an example.
Yeah.
on that.
No,
it
it
doesn't
was-
bother
I
me. And
understand.
I actually like the symmetry of the fact that you got Paul working as a policy guy. He's in policy for Steve Stenger, and now you got Doug. Both of them really respected at the post on the other team. I mean, at the county council, and there's sort of a symmetry to that. And they got to eat. I mean, it's not.
but let me say something, Ray. You might agree with
in
me
their
on this
defense,
one.
the Post-Dispatch, it doesn't have the resources to keep them,
And
I have no problem at all
I
with them
understand what you're
going
saying,
into
but you
government.
know what? Jane Mayer did have a good piece on. She's with the New Yorker, and she wrote on how a lot of people from Fox News are now with the Trump White House, from Bill Shine to a lot of the commentators
Yep.
and others, and it's a little problematic because it blurs the lines of distinction. One is supposed to be your government, the other is the watchdog of the government. And I remember when Walter Cronkite warned about this in the 1980s, because it was not always thus. You didn't have people in the revolving door going back and forth like you do now. Now we take it for granted, and I agree with you, Bill. It's good because Doug Moore needs the money, and he's going to have a good job and all that.
People need to work, and
People need
these
to
are
work.
talented people who the government
And
is fortunate to have.
I can't remember the name of the couple, but this also happened in the Obama administration as well. It was a married couple, and somebody worked inside the White House, and they were married to a reporter or
I
somebody.
vaguely recall.
It does
Yeah,
happen,
yeah.
but I don't think it always happened to the degree that it's happening now. And
No,
maybe it's
But with
because
newspapers, it's because newspapers are cratering, Charlotte.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
we have layoffs, and people look around and think, if I can find something steadier to do, I got to grab it.
well, on radio too. And full disclosure, my colleague Allison Blood left KMOX, and she became a fine spokesperson for the county executive, and then has most recently moved on to University City.
And I get it, but I'm just old school, and I'm not as old school as Walter Cronkite was. I was a young person then, but I'm just one of those that the newspaper I worked at, we would time how long the ad people could stay on the floor up there where we actually did the newspaper, and just we really were conscious of all that. And then one day that changed, and I'm still really uncomfortable with it.
All right. Hey, Alvin, I want to move on to another topic. The MLS's Don Garber, the commissioner, came to town on Monday, and he met with our leaders who are trying to create an MLS, Major League Soccer franchise for St. Louis. And the commissioner said, we've got a little bit of work to do, got to get the stadium naming rights, we have to get some advertising for the jerseys, but he was very impressed that we had a good group, solid group of businessmen who had convened for this luncheon. He also said later that it's now down to Sacramento and St. Louis, and he said the other cities are probably not in the mix anymore. So, who's going to get it, Sacramento or St. Louis?
I think we're the favorite. I think we will get it. But I think this was shakedown. I think that's why they arranged to have everybody there so they could say, like, it's a little up in the air if we don't get this stadium naming rights, we don't get this jersey thing taken care of. I think we're the forerunner. He just wants more, and he wants more. And I think, look, the Taylors and the Kavanaugh, they don't deserve this. They've got more than enough money to pull this off. For the most part, this is their own dime building the stadium. They don't deserve this, and I do think that it's I don't like it. Now, and another reason I don't like it, when the season started March 2nd, Huffington Post had a lengthy article. In New York, they've got a problem with, quite frankly, nationalists and neo-Nazis in the stands who have taken over like part of the seating section, and they've been other fans have been complaining about this since 2015. Garber, who came here and said, like, you need to do this and you need to do that. They asked him about this, and he basically had we're not in we don't want to profile our fans, and blah, 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 all mealy mouth about it. So you could tell St. Louis, and I guess Sacramento, exactly what you need to do, but you can't stand up and be forthright against that kind of nonsense in your own stands. It really turns me off. I don't trust him. I trust the Taylors. I trust those that are trying to bring this team to St. Louis. I do not trust the commissioner of Major League Soccer.
Well, I don't know too much about the neo-Nazis in the stands, but he did say quite openly that MLS is in a good position when he's got 5 or 6 cities competing for that spot. I mean, he knows he's playing one against the other.
But there's also the theory that they survive off expansion fees.
Well,
and what are they going to have? 40
more than
teams
theory.
one day?
I mean, but the NFL has been doing that for how long, right? And I mean,
Well, they generate money.
They generate
Well, I understand
billions
that.
of dollars.
I think I'm like you. I think we're going to get it too, and I think that it sort of takes me back to the ad that we watched. I think that there is a new sort of energy in the city of St. Louis, and I think that there are going to be a lot of people who are excited to support it.
And I think the Taylors made a really good counter move because they said, we're not going to be here in a year. You can either go with our franchise proposal or forget about us.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Smart. I did like that because I kind of think that was not directed at other businesses to come up with this money for the stadium naming rights.
It was directed at him.
That was directed at him. I do believe that.
I sure hope we get a team. I think it's completely unpredictable at this point. I mean, it has been such a moving target. And Alvin's point about Garver is spot on. I mean, this whole, if you go back to where it was and how many teams they were going to have and how it's a moving target. Everything with them is a moving target. It'd be nice. Sure, I hope we get it because I think it would be particularly good for morale. And we have such a great soccer heritage in St. Louis, and we've got fine ownership group. If you read the Sacramento Bee, you're going to see that they're talking about how their ownership group now, because the reason Sacramento didn't get it when it was the favorite some years ago was problems with the ownership group. Well, now they've brought in some new people there, and they've brought in some folks, and Alvin's so right. They're playing, they just, they're just playing cities against each other. As I said, all you can do is hope for the outcome.
It'll be a blow for civic pride if we don't get it. It'll be like with the expansion football teams, Charlottesville and Jacksonville. We go, really?
Really?
And
I remember that.
I think the Taylors and Kavanaugh are as good as it gets.
I agree.
And if we don't get it, it'll be a blow.
I will say this: it'll be a blow. If we don't get it, we were never destined to get it. That's how I feel about Garver and this crew.
Well, that's why I want to disagree with Bill. We'll take it as a blow. It shouldn't be a blow.
Yeah,
Hey, Bill, I want to ask you about FEMA, which actually came on my radio program this week. One of their administrators and others, they were asking people to sign up for flood insurance because we're expecting some heavy rains along with the melting snow, and apparently the rivers are going to rise in the spring of 2019, and I guess if you buy the flood insurance, doesn't kick in for 30 days, but you like the federal government dispensing flood insurance, don't you?
No, I'm very suspicious of it, Charlie. I think that insurance should be a private industry instead of this government stuff. It encourages people to build on the floodplain. And I always, the class warfare thing gets to me whenever we have a hurricane and I see somebody, one of these wealthy people who have built a home on the dune in North Carolina to overlook the ocean, and they get hit with the hurricane like they knew they would, but the government's going to rebuild for them. And I always think, I don't want to rebuild for those people. And it's petty, I know it, but so I heard the FEMA guy on your show, and I was ready to call in and say, stop it, but I didn't.
But you know what? You're right. If you have a $10 million property on the, oceanfront property, then, oh, poor you, what a loss. But if it's the people who live in mobile homes near a river, then, what are they doing there? You're absolutely right.
Right. When Chris Christie and President Obama were out there, they weren't off.
Superstorm Sandy.
They weren't off in wherever the hood was and got blown away. They were out there where the mansions were.
I remember George W. Bush consoling Trent Lott at Trent Lott's, home overlooking the ocean. And I thought, these guys got enough money that they don't need me to be providing.
They should have had like storm and like flood insurance.
Yeah, let them buy it on the private market.
Right, who do you call? 1-800-BROWNIE?
Well, but now, just to set the record straight, for those that aren't happening to live in utopia or wonderland, and with possible flooding coming here, FEMA is doing its job. First of all, you mentioned private insurance. If there's any institution I trust less than the big government, it's the big insurance companies. And it seems to me that it ought to be just generally easier for normal people with normal houses to get flood insurance affordably and I don't have any idea. It's above my pay grade. But in the short run, I don't think people should be dissuaded from listening to FEMA in this particular case. Because they got 30, with a meter running at 30 days, I do think FEMA's doing its job in this case. And, you know, whatever you think about the houses on the shores, you know, people need to
whatever
listen
you
to
think
FEMA.
whatever you think about insurance, technically FEMA could make the case where, listen, you're going to pay for it if these people, ultimately, you're going to pay for it if they don't have insurance, if they can't pay and they're poor, whatever. But the same can be said for health insurance and
the Affordable Care Act.
And people say,
same thing.
no. And they're like, so,
like I say, though,
we're
like
going to pay. Ultimately, we're going to pay.
A tornado can hit anywhere. But if you build right on the sand,
water,
you know that you're going to have a hurricane in a couple of years.
Yep.
Well, that's the same if you build in a floodplain, and we all do.
And the Affordable Health Care Act was a good thing.
Right.
But we can talk about that for another day.
Folks, we hope you join us for Donnie Bash, and that's going to be September the 26th. And thank you for joining us. I hope you called tonight. If you didn't, you can call through the rest of the evening or the rest of the week. Don't forget, you can always write us, care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Send those emails to letters@ketc.org and those tweets to hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Of course, no your turn this week, but you can always catch us on the podcast on Apple and Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. That's it for this edition of Donnybrook. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great St. Patrick's Day and anything else that you want to celebrate.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.